Hey, how's it going, everybody? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Well, this will at least be playing on Sunday. We are doing this as a pre recorded show. Dyanna has to be a dance mom tomorrow. So we are going to go ahead and do this for you guys today. So if you guys comment, we aren't ignoring you. We're just not present. But nonetheless, thank you for joining us for another episode of Church of True Christ Sunday Ministries. How's everybody doing? If you guys would not mind, let's all start off with the Lord's Prayer, direct from Aramaic translation. And we have some very interesting stuff we're going to talk about today. I'm actually looking forward to this, as this is something I'm pretty passionate about myself. So, all right, guys, let's bow our heads. O birther, father, mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us. Make it useful, as the rays of a beacon show the way. Unite our eye candy yours, so that we walk as kings and queens with every creature. Create in me divine cooperation, from many selves, one voice, one action. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. Forgive our hidden past, the secret shames, as we consistently forgive what others hide. Deceive neither by the outer nor the inner. Free us to walk your path with joy. From you is born all ruling will, the power and life to do. The song that beautifies all, from age to age, it renews. Amen. I know, I've always enjoyed that version so much more. I always have. I just felt like saying that because it just resonates on such a deeper level. I feel like it always talks about like the spiritual makeup of this experience, almost in a lot of ways, that very internal aspect of it. But nonetheless, yes, guys. So today we're going to be talking about how we embody Christ, how we learn to embody his alignment, his principles, his spiritual energy. And we are also going to be talking about moving into a solution-based mindset when it comes to our world and our collective reality as well. That can also apply to the subjective reality. But for the most part, we are a collective here on this planet. We're all kind of experiencing this awakening, this remembering that we're all going through. And I know a lot of people out there are really interested in getting into a new way of life and getting into a new way of being. So we're going to discuss some possibilities with that. But nonetheless, Dyanna, so you were talking with me earlier through text. We wanted to talk about this stair-step method when it comes to implementing our healing, because I know there's a lot of people out there, especially myself, when I first started embarking on my spiritual evolution. It's almost as if I opened up this internal closet of skeletons in me, and I opened this door and I looked up, and it was like almost 100 feet high, and it was like spread from rooms from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And when we do this, when we go through this process, it can seem so immense and it can kind of seem overwhelming, and you can kind of almost at times be like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Like this is going to take a bit, but don't be discouraged, because there's actually a very simple way you can start to implement this healing. And it's called not to fill your plate too much and not to fill your cup too much. That's at least kind of like what I'm going to kind of be going with it as. And, so when I talk about not filling your plate and not filling your cup too much, obviously there's a lot of things, you're going to have that you have to address within you to help embody, at a deeper level, Christ and the spiritual principles of Christ. But if you start with a few things on that plate, or maybe if you start with the cup half full, this kind of gives you an idea of how you can work with this on a step-by-step basis. And I'm going to turn it over to Dyanna and have her give her a little bit of a description of it, because she gave a really good description of it on Don Rogers' show, who was our guest last week. So Dyanna, let's hear what you said about this stair-step method when it comes to approaching our healing, because I think you really hit the nail on the head with it.
Well, it's funny using the terminology stair step, because that's not what I used originally, but it's interesting because I've been reading about that. So it's like a psychic tap in. The stair is how the microcosm of quantum physics works. It's a stair. And high in the macro, it's a scale, it's a sliding ramp. But once you get to the micro, or you could think the internal work, it is a stair That's just how it exists quantumly. And so too, that's how we work inside ourselves, because a lot of these topics we've been dissecting for a long time. And I think we, like, for the majority of us that have been living in sovereign discernment for so long, who've gone through the things, and that's not to say we're finished, but we're at a point where it's like, you need something more at a higher level, at a higher step to grab onto before you can continue on, because there's work, like, and you're not one thing, you're a work in progress. So the more you pull the top up, the more the bottom stuff naturally fixes itself. Like certain things like behaviors and emotions and embodying the Christ, like these things all become automatic when we fix the way our life is structured. And so these new realizations coming on of how misused dopamine is, and it's something people know, but I don't think they're fully, because it was this huge epiphany of it being kind of the key to unlock our next level. Because a lot of us here are just waiting in this world that we know it's like bleh, and we keep talking about a new world, and we have some visions of it in like permaculture and things like that. But really, like, let's be truthful. What does that mean? The cities aren't going to exist? Does that mean we're giving into the 15-minute city narrative? No, no. So we need to start thinking of more solutions than that. Obviously, tons and tons of micro farms is a great idea, but that's one idea that helps the food problem. But what's it do for us and our dopamine addictions? There is new ways, and I'm not even saying I have all the answers. You can't even make the answer until you find the right question. And the right question we're hitting.
You froze up there for a second, Dyanna, but no worries. I will keep going until you get back. And yes, no, it's interesting, that psychic tap-in we just had. No, that was not the exact word that you used. That for some reason it just felt fitting to me. You know, I don't know why, because I think a lot of us, when we envision this process, we see the stairs as almost like a simple way to compare this progression in our evolution when it comes to these topics. There you go. Go ahead, if you don't mind continuing.
Yeah, when did I cut out though? Because it doesn't always tell me accurately.
So you were talking about, I believe, you were talking about the stair in the microcosm.
Yeah, and how we are advancing into new ways of being, because we've been sitting in sovereign discernment and we want new ways of being. So it just comes down to us inventing them, and in a Christ-aligned way. And that means like doing the neural network work to actually invent it, because we are manifestors. We are the creators of this world. They knew this. They were hijacking it. Okay, we know that now though. Okay, narrative solved. So now we actually need to invent the new stuff, and not even literally like inventing it, but just like imaginating it that's not a word, but in a way that's going to actually tangibly be that Christ aligned new world that we want. And we're seeing it in different things. We know nature holds it, but a lot of us, and I think that's why we're on this timeline, we're not willing to let go of technology. That doesn't mean we want the Terminator future either, but we do want a technology aligned future where that works out. So and even Don was talking about that today in the other show panel. He was saying that like he had these plans of stopping his show when he got his actual farm, and then the divine kind of gave him some clues that that's actually not what the divine wants. The divine doesn't want him to stop his show. These shows require technology. Okay, so we're going to keep technology. Okay, we're dopamine addicts. And then here we go. So now where do we put the future, knowing that everything in the past is pretty much garbage? There'll be some shells of it that will like kind of look the same, but the whole thing needs to be retooled. The medical industry, the government, the school systems, the working system, the whole 9-to-5 schedule, all these awakening people are coming to. And I think what we're going to find as the divergence, well, guess what happened? Spoiler alert, at the end of that series, it turns out the divergents were just the normal ones. And the other characters and the different sects they would fall under, they were the ones tinkered with. The divergence turned out to be the actual normal ones. And I think that's what we're going to realize. And that's why the population keeps growing, because they're the actual true population.
I would completely agree with that. The one thing I want to bring up that you talked about, especially with the dopamine addiction, is yes, this is something that's an integral part of our healing here, is, you know, kind of understanding and having awareness of this, because, you know, when we kind of get stuck on this world today, like you were saying on Don's show, you know, we're going to have technology, and we know that technology is a tool. We understand that it can be used for either good or it can be used for bad. It can be used to create or destroy. So ultimately, that's amazing that, the divine gave Dawn that message and was like, keep doing the show. Because ultimately, I think we can find a harmonious way to work with technology and even potentially working with AI. There's a harmonious road to doing that. But nonetheless, this is part of our healing because, what we see a lot of, especially in our conscious collective, is we see a lot of people glued to the internet. We see a lot of people glued to social media. You and I have just been talking about kind of minimizing our usage and being our presence on social media due to, it potentially being a route that we could be taken advantage of. It could be used against us to some degree as well. But nonetheless, it also does kind of stop us from inventing these new ways of being. It stops us from kind of, it keeps our focus diverted. It keeps us from really kind of stepping into this a little bit further. So, I mean, even, creating these new ways of being and retooling these systems is something that we can ultimately start to, put forth into our collective, these ideas. Obviously we want, a more holistic approach to health and taking care of ourselves. Obviously we want this more holistic approach to educating our children, educating, even adults for later on. We want a more holistic approach to having, a system here, or maybe not even a system as we know it today, potentially something that it could evolve into something new that we haven't even touched yet in this match of humanity. I mean, I think ultimately where it comes from is shifting our mindset from being stuck almost in a victim mentality, like you and I have spoken about before, and shifting into more of a solution-based mind frame. And ultimately, that's going to be a process that, each of us has to take on ourselves, and we have to have awareness of this. But now's the time, like you're saying, we have a lot of these ideas, such as a sustainability, permaculture, earthship homes, building with the land, building with sacred geometries, even another option that we can start bringing to the table as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on some of these newer ideas? I mean, what are some of your, what do you think are some good ways we can start to kind of retool and, take that holistic approach that we're all looking for when it comes to this new way of being and walking into a better world?
Well, it comes into, I think the reason why we keep seeing the answers in nature and like all these nature solutions is because nature is the answer, but we have this other world. So we take nature and we pull it back into anything and everything we can. So like things like cities, have them grow up with green and then live within our own nature. So this means learning things like astrology and human design, knowing who you are, living from sovereign discernment, but in every realm. Like, when someone wants to be a boss in the future, that term might even just be gone. They will be the leader, the manager, the one who wants to have the responsibility, because we've seen it lots. Like there's tons of sheeple that whine about being victims, but when handed the opportunity to be leaders, they just truly don't want to. Like that's not in everybody. I've done lots of charts. This is why I love doing charts, because it helps me figure out humanity. And I'm a leader, Stephen's a leader, and that's great, but that's actually not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody wants that. Some people have it in their chart to just be like, my husband's chart is in his chart to just be really compassionate, really good to people, takes care of people, like that kind of thing. That's not the same position as person A is going to be. So each person has it in them, their own nature. And that's where we're going to go forward with society, and we won't miss out. The only things that'll fall away are the things that are false, meaning they're in nobody's nature, because there's 8 billion peoples in this world. So if everybody came online and started doing jobs that was in their nature, then the world would be perfect. It would fall into automatic harmony. So by diving into know thyself, that's why those teachings that I bring forward are what I'm obsessed with. And the main things I just constantly repeat, even though we can know all about quantum physics and how the universe works, and that's fantastic. But if you haven't healed the self and know the self, what does that really matter? Because when you learn about quantum physics and the laws of reality, you realize the all is mind and you are a creator being. So what's that mean? That is the ultimate amount of power, but also the ultimate amount of responsibility. So you need to be sovereign and discerning, and find out who you are, and then what is your thing. Where do you fit? Because you're going to fit somewhere, and then that's going to be a beautiful job for you. Some people like making things. Some people like helping other people. Like that is actually their happy thing. Like to be whatever the service industry is that requires that. People go through stages in their lives. Like when you're younger, you might like that kind of job because it's exciting and you're building confidence. Like I remember when I first had my first few jobs that I had at a different age would be like, bleh, but having that in my early years was actually wonderful. So like there's times and places. So things are going to flow. Will we see complete industries disappear? Yes, but it will happen through nature, and we can't expect them to change, but all we can do is en masse, as many people as wake up as possible. That's the cure. Go into your insides. And you might say, oh, it's easy for us because like podcasting, in both of our charts, we did it. We ran a string through astrology, gene keys, and human design. Podcaster was on both. And Stevens was more predominant for podcasting. Mine was spiritual teaching, and that's what I'm usually obsessed with. So there was variables. There was like 10 things on each of our lists when we did these charts. And so that you don't have to stick to just one thing. There's going to be variables within your nature, and you can spend your life going through and experiencing it all. And at the end of that life, you will find that you were completely fulfilled the entire time. Does that mean it was easy the entire time? No, because working hard, that's what the soul wants, or it wouldn't have become a human. So, but you can do hard work of the soul. And that's again, when Christ comes in as a friend to be there with you, so you're not alone. And we just one step at a time, only by following our own nature, rebuild the new world, because we can't step outside our zone and expect to be successful. We can only be successful in what's preordained for us, but that's huge. Like that's not determinism. That's still a large variety of ways to live your life and act out reality and to manifest reality, because you're the creator being.
Absolutely. And I like how you said the nature is the answer and the call back to nature. And ultimately, yes, I agree with everything you just said. It's going to be, what's in our nature. Are we a scientist? Are we more of a creator, as far as like art, things like that? Are we more involved in the system? Are we more involved in, things like potentially, organization, management of like new projects? Like, everybody has their own unique talent that they can bring to the table when we jump into the solution-based mentality and we start implementing these changes into this new way of being. And ultimately, what you kind of said, though, kind of going back to nature, it brought this up. It's actually a very interesting story. And this is something we could actually potentially change, moving forward as being part of the solution-based. I don't know if you've heard of the fruit tree conspiracy. So this is actually something that's pretty simple, but no. So a lot of these city planners, right? A lot of these people who plan like the arborism of cities or the landscaping of cities, they purposefully only do male plants. They never do any female plants or, trees that have fruiting bodies. And, they make the excuse that, oh, it's a mess that we have to clean up, about the flies. Ultimately, we know that they don't want us having free food. But ultimately, too, it leads to, why a lot of people experience allergies with pollen. It's because, you have these gigantic city centers, with just male plants. And they're just trying to find, so that's definitely something. I know you were talking about a different nature, but that actually
that balance, and that's throwing into disharmonious balance. The patriarchy, even in the plants.
I know. It's funny, but I mean, it's also understanding too that it starts on a personal level. It starts on a personal level that we make these changes to ourselves and we implement a more solution-based mentality to our own subjective lives. And then throughout that, we spread with others. We lead by example. We've talked about this on Church of True Christ before, leading by example, by living through our values and showcasing our alignment in everything that we do. And that ultimately is going to cause the shift in our communities as well into being in a more solution-based mindset. Because even as Dyanna and I were talking about before the show, yes, there's a lot of aspects of this world right now that suck. There's aspects of it that do not service us. There's aspects of it that almost in some ways seem spiritually devoid at this point in time. And that's where we are here to come in, and we're here to change that. We're here to change this game, with our, and even just as something as simple as maybe having community meetups, maybe something as simple as, being one of the first people to kind of do like a community garden or something along those lines, just kind of gets the ball rolling, and it gets, people to start taking a look at the greater possibilities that we could be having here in this existence, being more aligned with spirit and Christ, and ultimately, we're looking at this. There is a way to have Christ be a part of, everything that we do. And, it doesn't have to. One of the biggest things I hear from a lot of people when I talk about bringing back a spiritual way of being to our existence is they automatically shift right to theocracy. Like they automatically think that, like, oh no, we're not going to have, the church running over our society again. We're not going to have, this same situation that didn't work in the past occur again. And no, it's quite frankly, it's much farther from the truth. That's far from the truth. Embodying this spiritual way of life is through the way that we live. It's through our actions towards others. It's how we exist and coexist in our community. It's the solutions that we take to build a better world. It is, especially when it comes to, evolving or collective evolvement as well. So, your mic.
100%. And one other suggestion that came up while you were talking, because all the community stuff is great, and that I see is happening in a small degree because those that feel aligned with it are doing that. But what I realized, like, I moved out to the country to do just the same. I have an area that could be like that I was growing when I first moved here, but it is not in my nature to grow food. It's not. That's what made me realize, like, that's why this whole farming thing, I'm like, that's not the solution for everyone. And there's lots of people, and it's like, oh, well, why? That's not in my nature. It never once comes up in my charts. It's never once in any of my things. I'm very fire, so that doesn't sound good for plants. Like, so that's not of my nature. So let's just pretend though that, because I'm actually very blessed that I'm called to spiritually teach and be a podcaster. So lol, like, that's a gift. And that's why we're the pioneers here, because those that awaken first are usually the ones that are called, and that's part of their nature. However, we're seeing more and more and more, like even like our friends' wives and stuff like that, coming online with just wanting to be spiritual as well, like wanting to get involved as well, but they're not fitting in. They don't care about my own sister. She doesn't care about like telling anybody about what she knows. Like, that's not part of her thing. Mm-hmm. And it's not of her nature. So one thing you could do if you find yourself in a job, this is a realistic solution right now. If you're in a job, let's say you even like the job, I don't know, you need to start pushing back. And that's how we are part of the revolution, is you need to start pushing back. Stop and this is why in transurfing, they say always have a plan B, because when you have a plan B, it actually helps plan A happen better. So maybe figure out a plan B, because I'm not going to say like, yeah, you might get fired, and that might have dire consequences. But if people don't start pushing, and I did that when I was at work, and I did get fired. So I know what it's like. I did get fired, but now look where my life is now. It's much better. So just let yourself get fired. And that's harsh advice, and not naturally, like, don't be a bad person about it. Don't like, from a heart aligned Christ space way. If your boss comes to you and says, do blah, 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 say your truth. Or if you're in a meeting and they're talking about ideas, say that's a bad idea. Like, if everybody in the hospital system was do you think everybody that works in the hospital system agrees with how bureaucratic and awful they're run in most countries? No, I hear, because a lot of my family works in the hospital systems. I hear how, oh, that's dumb. That's so dumb. And I hear these stories and I'm livid. Because if I was there, I would say something and I'd be fired, is what they tell me. Well, then you'd be fired. That's insane. That's insane. And it's a hospital system. I should be able to tell my truth. But no, and my educated truth too. Like, I know about this information. And let's say I was working in the hospital and I had a degree in nursing or whatever the situation was. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO. The CEO was just fired. Like, the It's insane because people are starting to wake up and they're starting to say the truth. And the firings that are going on in the hospital systems around here are off the charts, but we just keep doing it. And some of them are doing it accidentally, because I'm finding even the sheeple are waking up, because the ability to live not in your authenticity is going away. Like, that's the veils of that are being removed. And then a lot of these people are going to wake up without even realizing it. And that was foretold. And you can see that their personalities are coming online. They're less inclined to just do what they automatically are told, but it's in a slower going way. But imagine if somebody awakened, was at a job, and they spoke their truth and they could back it up. And then maybe you'll get fired. But if you just got to keep, because it's alchemy, right? The beaker boils and the impurities vanish. So if that job was in disharmonious balance with you and you get fired, that's the universe doing you a favor. And then hopefully there's a plan B. And we just have to figure it out. Like I did. I got fired in 2015. Like, I did this a long time ago. And it was amazing. I'm not even gonna lie, it was amazing. In Canada, we have unemployment. I took that for a year, figured my life out, and it's been great ever since. And just on an upward trajectory. It's not like it was roses right away, but I was not sad about getting fired. And I knew it was the birth of my new existence. And it was. And it just keeps, especially if you get fired, because Stephen, you were saying in America, like, if you just get fired for speaking your mind, they probably owe you some kind of severance and some kind of pay, probably for at least a year. I got a year. And then that's enough time to figure your life out. And maybe you have to scale it back a little bit in the meantime, but that's a gift. Like, don't do anything outright to like get fired for at fault. Like, don't burn the place down or anything, but just
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
No, totally. We're not saying walk into your job and decide to light it ablaze. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
But
just speak your truth. That's the blaze. That's all the blaze you need.
No, totally. No, and I get what you're saying from it. And it even brings to the question, because you were talking about it, is a life devoid of the inner light of your authenticity a life worth living? That's something also too that you brought up. A very, very great point on that. And yes, and it is. It's ultimately up to us to start implementing these changes and these shifts and these pushbacks ultimately. And just kind of like what you were saying, speaking your truth at work. So here in the States, it's funny. The only time you get any kind of severance is if you're laid off. So what laid off means is they don't have any more, or their workload has gone down significantly to where they don't need the manpower that they currently have anymore. So what they'll do is they'll end up trimming the edges, but they'll give these people layoffs. And in that case, yes, they will give you a severance. How long the severance or how large it is kind of up to the industry or the company.
In America, in Canada, though, you're good.
Yeah. So that's, we got it a little rougher. We got it a little rougher here than you do up there for sure. But nonetheless, no, it's a good question. Is a life devoid of the inner light of your authenticity a life worth living? And absolutely not, because we've spoken about here on this channel before how living in the light of your authenticity, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, is living in alignment with Christ. So I agree with you, Dyanna. It is ultimately, that's something we see a lot in my industry of work. And that's why I've put my foot down and I've pushed back quite a bit, because in the trades, they have that mentality. The more work is better. It also comes down to us too to kind of undo this workaholic mindset of our current system. I'm sure Canada might have it to an extent as well.
Oh yeah, no, even more so. They ripped all the mothers out of the home here, unless you're viciously stand against it. Where I heard America's a little better with allowing stay-at-home moms, just as a societal allowed thing, not even money, but like it's not so shamed. Here it's a serious shaming, which that's the breaking of the soul from a very young age.
And that's to see that shamed, because we know that family is divine too, and that ought to be a red flag to everybody out there. Any system that wants to divide the family, or to break it down to any degree like that is definitely a system that we shouldn't be in. I mean, even if the system says that it's in alignment with God's values, we talk about, actions speak louder than words, because here in America, we say one nation under God. And although it is easier to be a stay-at-home mom here, there's a lot of chastising towards stay-at-home moms too that can occur. They call them breeders here. Some of the left here calls stay-at-home moms breeders and things like that. So there has kind of almost in some ways this derogatory.
So it's starting, yeah.
This derogatory air has started to kind of, and that's why, as much as too, don't get me wrong, like I don't agree with the conservatives on everything.
No. We said it back. Don't even remember because we didn't want to be in that camp, but we found ourselves in that camp, and now we're refusing a camp. We're refusing a camp because
we're just refusing the camps. Yeah.
They both went wrong.
They did, but nonetheless, we'll digress back to what we're talking about. But so it is. It's about making these small changes to your world, these small changes to your existence that are ultimately going to manifest and unfold, and it's going to show you more of your nature, as Dyanna was saying as well, the talents and the abilities that you can bring to the table. In this new way of being, in this new way of life. And, it really kind of shows how each of us in our own way has this specialness about us. And, we kind of, we don't usually talk about this too much because sometimes, it can get caught up on the ego side of things, but ultimately we are to our own degree in a lot of our own ways, very special as human beings. And that's ultimately what Christ wants us to find out about ourselves as well. So yes, I'm going to say definitely dive into that nature, everybody, dig into that. And, start exploring these new possibilities. And I mean, I do think, one of the biggest things we can potentially start doing is having more churches like this, having more of these community meeting places where we can all get together and we can discuss, like you said, in my chart and your chart, we got lucky with Podcaster, we were blessed with that to be doing what we're doing right now. And so we're holding a common place for a lot of people. But for those out there, too, who might have, a podcaster in your chart or potentially a teacher of along the lines, too, this is something you can do as well and start to implement these places where we can start to get together and we can start to talk about and discuss these ideas while also bringing healing to the pre-existing, archetypes of our human collective consciousness as well. And that's something, that's about talking about those hard to talk about topics. You and I have talked many a times about the dueling dance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine right now. We see the dynamic between men and women in our world today. You've even said you can almost feel like the internal rage just a little bit that exists between us. And I agreed with you on that too, because I was like, yes, even though, because I, at my job, I'll interact with women sometimes too. But yes, you can kind of feel almost like there's a little bit of this collective anger almost existing there. And so too, it's going to be talking about those hard to talk about topics such as the man-woman dynamic, re-embracing sexuality in our society in a healthy way, as opposed to an unhealthy way, and really taking a look at this system that we're currently in as well that doesn't service us at all. I mean, I saw a meme. What was it? I don't remember the meme exactly, but it's like we spend all of this time just going to work and working in the way that we are now to afford this house that we barely spend any time in. And we build these families that sometimes, we have to fight to spend time with our family.
What should be the focus of our lives is now a background thing I'll get to when I got time for it. And then you resent your kids. And then you have all these old people that don't talk to their kids and all these disjointed relationships. And I wonder why. And my husband always sings that song, when you coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. And then it reverses and it ends with, it's kind of like the inversion of that Robert Munch story of I'll love you for always, I like you. And then it goes throughout its whole life, because the Robert Munch version is the version you want, dad or mom. That's the version you want. And you do want a job, because I've even discovered that. I spent years just being a mom. And there is a bit of I don't want to say it, but you do want a little something else. You do want a purpose and a passion, because kids are very ungrateful. They don't appreciate anything you do. And so the woman does start to want something else. And I think that
No, I can imagine, and yes, it is. It's more or less not, we're not telling everybody, to quit working or anything along those lines, or to not work a job. It's about reinventing what we do. Go ahead. You were talking, you left off. Yeah.
Yeah, so women, I think it's okay for women to work. And then now okay, because when this all started, the divine masculine feminine, like the feminine was put into the work world. Okay, fine, here you go. And they used it to manipulate us, and they put us in as men because they just wanted more men. They're like, let's just make women men too. Men, just like the trees, right? But
Mhm.
the truth is like women can enter the workforce as women. Like women have a place to play. Women have a role to do. They have their own position. So being a mom is great, but we can do so many other things that fits into the nature. We could probably do almost every job. I don't see one we couldn't do if we really wanted to. You even have like women going to the gym and they truly love it. So like all physical jobs are on the table if they really want it. But it has to be aligned as a female. Don't be trying to compete with the man on the man standard, because men are going to be totally different. Men are going to be way more competitive. And there's just so many different things that like, but the man's not going to see all the variables that the female sees. The man's not necessarily going to be as compassionate, but actually nowadays men are definitely doing better at that. There is a compassion coming online inside the
Mhm.
masculine that you can see almost everywhere, like except a really old man, but you can see it like in most, and even then you see a haunting in his eyes, like he wish he did better. So fixing those variables right there, and fixing the family unit. Like when you were talking about the daycare system's another system who I've said publicly before has split from her man. Good. And she's 50-50 sharing 100%. They go back and forth every other day because he's actually a wonderful dad. He's very good with the kids, and why not? She moved
Mhm.
right close by him, like tried to do the smartest thing she could. Because I'm not for divorce, especially if you have kids. But if the relationship is as toxic as theirs was, which a lot of people have that problem, then by all means split. And she was doing one day. Well, she's needing to get like subsidized daycare. She's obviously like, she pays all the bills. This is why he's not good. He's not good financially. He's not supportive of the family. She was the breadwinner, and she just got tired of having an extra child, which a lot of women are finding themselves in. She still is helping him financially and all that stuff. So that's great. I'm supporting that. But she goes to the daycare system, and she had to lie. And they even like hinted for her to lie, because in our daycare system, you have to have a custody order of full-time custody to get, and that is not in alignment with a family unit. That's not in harmony of keeping a family together, even if they have to get divorced. How is that helping anything? And the court systems that exist that just are just, the bureaucracy over the family is disgusting, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh, I would completely agree. Even though I don't have much experience with it, I have had so many people on my show talking about children and everything that is going on with children in this system, and how this system almost seems like almost sees our children as like its property. Which is something that we can do without. One thing that you brought up, I want to bring up, that was really interesting, is ultimately what we can do to kind of help things along too is take our own part in healing those gender archetypes too. You know what I mean? Like us as men, we have the responsibility to kind of put forth healing into the collective masculine archetype. I often joke right now that our collective masculine archetype is very grumpy, very stubborn, and very old school. It's almost like kicking back because of what's been going on with the feminine archetype. A lot of people do feel that, masculinity is being attacked at this point in time. But, you can bring that to the table. You can heal these aspects of yourself, because, one of the biggest things we talk about when it comes to our healing as well is ultimately what we heal within us does give a part to the collective as well. It is through our own work, and we change our internal existence. Through that, our external existence starts to reciprocate from that work that we do. So that's something I wanted to bring up as another way we can move into that solution-based mentality and step into that new way of being, is almost give that kind of like, a little bit of an accelerated healing process, even what you were talking about with the systems as well, when it comes to daycare and, or when it comes to the systems with children. in this world is too. I feel like it's up to, in order to bring healing to that, we have to bring focus to that. Ultimately, it is like you were saying with the job, speaking out and pushing back at the job. We have to speak out and push back against what these systems are doing to our children, our family structure, and things like that, because ultimately that's what's going to bring focus to it. And we know that, this is something we've both said ad nauseum, you and I, but it bears repetition because it is something that is a foundation, for our spiritual evolution. That energy goes where the focus goes. Energy flows where the focus goes. So when you speaking your truth and pushing back, and there's also that aspect too. A lot of people might question, is that something spiritual to do? Is that something in alignment with Christ, is to speak that truth and to push back? And I'm telling you, it is. Absolutely. Christ was an awakener. Christ was a revealer. Christ spoke his truth. We talk about, I know we've brought this up before, but we can even go in a little bit detail. Christ was he was a rebel. He spoke out. I mean, he went and flipped the money changers' tables, guys. I'm not saying go into your bank and flip tables, although I have to stop myself from doing that at least once a week. But don't do that. But at the same time, look at the symbolism behind that. Look at the parable behind the flipping of the table. It is ultimately a parable of speaking your truth, and ultimately giving that pushback to these societal systems that we know that no longer service us. So it could have even came from if during COVID, guys, like you didn't wear the mask, you didn't do that, you didn't get the vaccine. That's speaking your truth. That's that's pushing back on
wave. That sent this wave through reality. That's why we're having this authentic upgrading on a larger degree.
It's funny. There's maybe we can touch base on this later, but there was a theory going around now. I saw this today. This is a little off topic. I just wanted to say it because I thought you would probably dig it. That there's this theory going around that the world actually ended in 2020 and we're in a simulation right now.
Or 2012. I've actually heard it, but 2012, because that was the changing of the era. That really was the changing of the era. 2020, because people like you and I were already awake. So when 2020 came around, we laughed. That was just a deepening of the awakening. Like it was a deepening. But for them, that seemed like their 2012 because they ignored 2012 or didn't hit them because it happens in waves. Maybe they actually didn't get, I think they all did. Because even myself, I think before 2012, I was getting, and it all happens in those rounds. And 2020 was a huge one.
Absolutely. But nonetheless, like we were saying, I just wanted to bring that up because that was pretty interesting.
It's very important. It's true.
It is. It's interesting. Maybe we can touch on it at the end a little, but no, exactly. Like you got to look at the parable again, the parable of flipping the table, speaking your truth and pushing back on these corrupt.
Well, we shouldn't live in a world where you have to do that. That's the whole point. We shouldn't live in a world where because it's not that way forever. So you're talking about it being stressful, but if we all do it, it's only going to be a few years of that. And that's how we change the system. But if it's only like you were saying before, how there'd only be one God and they'd worship them, right? But if all of us do it, it's going to happen. It's not just going to be a story they talk about in 1,000 years. All of society will change.
Exactly. And that's why I think this is how it's starting to manifest for us here at this time during this awakening and this remembering, actually it was on the other episode that our new listener, he brought up, let's even touch on this for a second again, because we only got like a couple of minutes to touch on it the last time because it was at the end of the episode. But this viewer had asked both Dyanna and I if we had any ideas for, who the next avatar of Christ would potentially be.
Yeah, and I wanted to say no one. It's all of us.
100%. And that's exactly the answer. So it's Christ will return through en masse at this time is what I feel.
But it's already happening. It's just realizing it and going with the power of knowing that in your truth.
Absolutely. It is already happening. And this is where I'm trying to give like a perspective shift to everybody, because it is, it's like you have looked throughout history. It always has been just one Christ-like being returning. Whether it was the incarnation of Christ known as Osiris, whether it was the incarnation of Christ known as Horus, or, the incarnation of Christ known as Ahura Mazda, and all of the different incarnations of Christ that have come to us throughout the scope of humanity. It was originally one, but look at what happens when it's always just one. It almost gets diluted. It gets taken over instead of people embodying the teachings of this individual that came to give this message. It almost becomes a form of worship. And what's the best way to alleviate that and cause an ultimate shift is to have it return within all of us. It is the realization, because for those who have this realization and who understand it, they will in turn pass the realization on to others as well by living in that harmony with Christ. And ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to destroy the worship factor of it all. It's going to kind of pave the road for what I would say, and I've gotten a little bit of flack for this term in the past, but I honestly feel it just resonates, the inner standing of Christ. When we talk about the word understanding, it's an understanding that you have deep within yourself, that it's meant for you in a way that only you understand. And the way that I understand might not be, the way Dyanna understands, and the way Dyanna understands might not be the way that you understand. But that's what's ultimately going to be this revival of Christ. It's going to return in mass, in our opinion, at least.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I came to earlier, and I'm glad that just reminded me of it, because the yin yang, and we've always talked about this. We said we knew, I'm the yin, you're the yang, but it's so much more than just that. But it's coming from that. But like the way we do ascension, like the way we actually evolve our lives is so different. Like you and I, but yet we come together and we agree on all the variables of how the future should look and how Christ is, and all the actual things that matter come together and meet in the middle exactly the same. So what society used to do, keep you, oh, you're doing that wrong. Oh, you're Christianing wrong. Oh, you're baking wrong. Whatever the judgment used to be of the olden days, that was just like barf. You and I are complete, because we could do that to each other. I could be like, oh, you're too rigid. You have too many schedules. You're not going to be free flowing like the spirit man, like the old hippies, right? Or you could say to me, well, you're not disciplined enough, like the monks would say. You don't have a schedule. You won't ascend because you're not on the schedule. But no, that's just how our systems work. Your system thrives on the discipline that the monks would love, right? Where my system thrives on the hippie dippy, yeah, man, like whatever. Like that is what fuels me, but that's not what fuels you. Yet at the same time, we are coming together with the same answers and the same agreeing on how the future should look, because that's just this. And the Sacred Heart right there, that's why I got these earrings for this podcast, because the Sacred Heart right in the middle, the Sacred Heart. They used to say our heart was over here, and some people, I think, was on one.
You froze up, but no, they did. They used to say our heart was over here, and now they're saying it's. I think there was some kind of shift, if I remember correctly. I don't know. It could have been a jump in the timeline, or we could have evolved to some degree. I know. Oh, go ahead. What were you saying? You were saying that the heart used to be here, but now
it's in the middle, right? I think that's a symbol. Whether or not they might have just realized it's in the middle and started to actually accurately discuss it, or timeline shifting. I'm open to either, but the heart's in the middle. And what was one of the symbols of Christ? It's in ancient art everywhere. The Sacred Heart, because it's in the middle. And then it's also, it's our heart center. It's a portal. There's all these, whenever the truest of God universe is telling you the answer, he tells you in so many layers: Christ, the heart, the middle pillar, alignment, yin yang, Heros Gamos, alchemy. All the answers sound like different things, but they're the same thing. And it's just telling you in a million different ways because the human's complicated and there's so many variables to life. But yeah, so us two coming from these two separate sides, doing our ascension in two almost completely different ways, and then still coming up with the same answers, that says something right there. That shows the human is complicated, it is varied. And when we go, like we were saying at the beginning of the episode, into our truest of true nature, whatever that might be, because it could be different. Like, I'm not saying all women are hippie. I know tons of type A women, tons of them. So, and I know hippie men. So that's not even a male female thing. It's just a variable in the way we are doing ascension. And notice how it leads us to the same place, the same united space. So everybody too can go by their own variables in their own way and still keep ascending and enlightening.
Absolutely. I would actually take the title monk with a dash of hippie. Yeah. I would take the title monk with a dash of hippie, because I have my little bit of hippie to me. Don't get me wrong. But no, I feel you. It is interesting on how we always end up meeting in the middle. It's like we have our own ways and our own. I just wanted to bring up the Sacred Heart of Christ if anybody has not seen that yet. But it's interesting on how we, have our own unique ways of, this understanding, the way we go about our spiritual evolution, our processes, and we always end up meeting in the middle. It's like we have this, and this is a lot of our collective at this point in time. And actually something I want to bring up too, it was something our friend Don said in our group chat, how he almost like felt like, what was this guilt, this shame, almost of how he's viewing Christ right now, almost.
Yeah.
Us coming on, and doing this church and trying to bring back true Christ. And Don, of course, is all about it. He's our great friend, but he's been noticing, he's been getting this feeling. And that is, we were talking about healing archetypes earlier, healing our gender archetypes and along those lines, but there's also a Christian archetype in our collective consciousness as well. And that archetype is very old school in and of itself, and sometimes when we're trying to expand upon our path with Christ and we start looking through these deeper esoteric avenues of exploring Christ as well, this is something that can come up for us a little bit, almost like feeling the shame, that you're not doing it. Like you were saying, you're Christianing wrong. Almost like this is like this energy that we get from, this collective archetype when it comes to this, like, you're Christianing wrong. But ultimately what we have to understand is that this is the energy that humanity has put forth towards, Christ. We know that Christ is not this rigid, judgmental, I guess you could say judgmental. I said that already, or like this strict, rigid set of dogma. We know that Christ is not that, and we know that Christ is compassion. It's love. So ultimately, too, that's something we have to do as we explore ourselves with Christ on a deeper inner sense level, is we have to bring healing to that archetype as well. I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was very interesting on, how we knew somebody who was experiencing this. And also we know that this is the conditioning from the Christian archetype in our collective consciousness right now.
And it's a major theme that Christians have gone through time and time again, but enough is enough, because this is a hot topic happening right now on the internet. And I'm not usually in on that stuff, but I love Jordan Peterson and my husband watches his stuff. So he keeps me appraised. And because he's one of those people, I learned everything he had to say. And I was like, yep, got it. Good, gone. And so he's doing this panel, and it used to be called like 12 atheists against a Christian. But while he was doing it, one of the people, like trying to get him to define it, the whole time I'm like literally trying to stop. My husband was so annoyed. I was like, it's because he's expanded. He understands the all is mind. It's why he's teaching people young, just like I do, because all that matters is the self. The all is mind. And he's using Christianity as a platform because he understands that it's in our veins. It's in our DNA. It's a part of our mind matrix. It's like, I think like 1/3 of everybody in the entire world is a Christian. So imagine the entire matrix all share. That's a powerful hold the Christians have. And then these Christians afterwards, because, oh my God, he made me watch these podcasts. I was begging him to stop. I was like, shut them off. They were making me so mad, because there's this bunch of Christians, and they're known podcasters you guys have probably heard of. I don't watch that kind of stuff. But he does. And they're going on just trying to like to call him a bad Christian. And and they're giving Bible quotes to, you got to stand up for Christianity. I'm like, you guys don't get it. He is not that kind. He's gone past you. He's not a Christian. He's not a Christian. He used to be an atheist himself. He's not that kind of Christian. He's what we are. He's understand the all is mine. He even tells people, he seeds and hints, just like Carl Jung used to do. I have studied every religion. He's even traveled around and experienced it in the flesh. He does yoga. He even says that, just like Carl Jung did. Like if anybody's Carl Jung reincarnated, it's him. And so he's seeding this to people. So I think he's going to grow, and I think he's going to keep doing this, because he can't just come out and say what he's saying the same reason Carl Jung didn't. Because Carl Jung says in his 2009 finally released Red Book, if he had told people sooner everything that he knew, which is what we know, what we tell people, he would have been discredited and it would have been thrown out. But both of them were teaching that same message, that you have to ascend. Heros Gamos is Jung does mention that, but he mentions it like intellectually. He does have a whole book on alchemy, so he definitely tried to get this across to people, just like Jordan is trying to seed in these things to people to get them to realize you are God. And that comes in with the Christ light, and just exposing that further, because what the Christians hold within all of society, even if you're raised atheist, is deep.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I did want to bring up that funny meme, where they were like, anything else you would like to add, Mr. Young? And he said, F around and find out.
Yeah.
And the person goes, you can't say that. And he goes, okay, well, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. But exactly how you're saying, it is. When we look at, it's almost part of like Christ is, or at least the Christian aspect of us is embedded almost in our genetic memory, or our genetic makeup. And it's using, what he's doing is he's sugarcoating it, but in the way that he's sugarcoating it, he's doing it in a smart way. He's dropping the hints, he's dropping the subtleties of the actual message. And I mean, a lot of us who have come to, I've myself have been through pretty much every religion, every spirituality that there is to exist here on this planet, and that is ultimately what you gather from them all. If you do that searching, and you do that reading, and you look through these different religions and spiritualities, we've all heard the term, the same song, different melody, or the same song, different verse, something.
Same shit, different day. How about that one?
Same shit, different day. Exactly. So, but that's what you pull from it, and ultimately we see that's what Christ was trying to say as well, in a lot of his teachings, is that the all is mind. Mm-hmm. It is that is, you are a subjective focal point of the divine, and that is what Christ realized about himself. This incarnation of Christ, known as Yeshua, realized about himself, and through his teachings, that's what he tried to relay to others. So that's ultimately too one thing, that's going to come into play with healing this modern Christian archetype is, we look at, and there's nothing wrong with the exoteric. It's good to explore that. But, we look at this modern Christian archetype, and it just negates the esoteric aspect of our existence altogether. And it demonizes that. And so, like, when somebody who walks with Christ wants to start exploring the inner sense of it all and going within themselves, to experience that kind of pushback, that kind of feeling of this shame and guilt for going within ourselves, that we just want to tell everybody here that you shouldn't have any shame or guilt for exploring that aspect of your existence, because ultimately that's where Christ wanted you to look, right?
That's what Christ was. Like you were saying, he was the renegade. He was flipping the tables, but he wasn't a Christian. People need to remember this. And he didn't set down any religion. He gave them one rule: treat your neighbor as thyself. Why? Because that neighbor is also you. And everything he teaches, every parable he gives, is so deep, powerful, and extreme wisdom. But none of it was setting up a dogmatic religion. That happened by the Romans like 500 years later. And I wonder why. And they knew, I don't know this for a fact, this is just an intuitive knowing. They knew that the Christic layer of reality was real. They knew that. And that's why they literally interweaved into the tapestry of our actual tangible reality this Christian dogmatic religion. Even Martin Luther, like we talked before about the people that try to get away. Martin Luther tried to bring it back, but that only lasted for his lifetime, because really, and the Geneva Bible seemed good, but so maybe it had 100 years after where people were starting to awaken again. But then you had the King James Bible, which crushed that and weaved in just another layer, because every time someone tries to get away, they manage to weave it back in at a higher level. Like if they were to silence us today, but you were to never forget about what we talked about, if we were as big of a deal as Jesus, they would find a way to use our words and weave it back in to their control matrix. But they're literally using their own threads of reality to weave it into the Christic field, because that's why it holds us with such a strong bond. And that's true. That's why the Christ of it is all true. That is real. But they use their own dogmatic rules and they hold it so strong, because technically, in reality, a falsehood should fall away much sooner than their falsehoods lasted. The way they crushed out the feminine, the way that they did so many things. They also used the instincts of humanity, because I'm not saying that the genders were perfect before Christianity, not at all. So they used what was already happening in reality. And that's because we were so concerned with our survival, and women were small and died easily. And there was so much going on. They had way too many children. There was a lot of actual life human problems that caused this rift between the masculine and feminine. But that was almost natural, and it could have taken care of itself. But they came in with their dogmas and they wove it into the fabric of our reality. That's what the false matrix is. Because matrices is just how reality is built. But when you have a false matrix, you're working with basically a dark wizard here that knows exactly how reality works and is using it to weave your attention, because you are all part of the weavers. There's 8 billion strands of our streams going up that weave into reality. So the more that they get you to believe the same narrative, look at the media today, the more the stronger their thread is. And that even goes, like, God always gives us the answers. Threads have a count. There's a count in threads. Well, ours is 8 billion technically. So the top amount they can get in on that, the stronger their thread is. And currently they have one third of the population. So if we can shift that to expand reality, because truth will hold, but because they have such a huge population, that takes work. That takes us speaking our truth and working to be free, because we don't even want to replace their thread. We just want to remove that stitching. We want to get out that tool and remove that stitching, because the actual fabric of the matrix, of our organic matrix, is already there. It's just fine. But there's all these, imagine if a scab on your body was fake. Imagine if the scab on your body was fake. So we pick scabs off. That used to be a thing kids would do. They'd pick off their scabs. Well, imagine underneath that, what is there? Your holistic skin. Like, let's just pretend there was never really a wound. You know what I mean? You pick off the scab and you're just fine. But while the scab is there, it's taking vital life force. It's working for its own nefarious purposes. And that's what the theys do. And there's many theys that will try to, sometimes they work together, sometimes they fight each other, sometimes they all have these other interwoven problems that don't concern us, because either way, they are all treating us like their little creation machines.
The capital they, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The capital they. Well, that's how they do it too. And so how do they weave these threads? Dyanna was breaking it down. Here's my kind of interpretation of it. So, we look at how, like we say, the all is mind, right? And we know that our consciousness creates reality, so that we know that our existence we have here on a collective level is a mutually agreed upon experience that we are having. And so we as a people, we have always collectively throughout the ages of humanity have always looked to these sources of authority for the answers to the bigger questions of life. Again, looking without as we should be looking within. But nonetheless, and we know that these authorities figures have never had our best interest in mind. So the truth that they deliver to us is more often than not the entire truth, a half truth, or not the truth at all. But then what we do as a collective is we accept this as a truth from this source of authority. And when we accept this truth, that's when the other thread gets woven into our reality of the false matrix. Because if we collectively are mutually agreeing upon this experience that we're having here in this existence through our collective consciousness, when we take on a truth collectively, it weaves that thread into that false matrix. So you look at what happened with Christianity, and we're talking about the Christian archetype right now and why it is the way it is they continuously weaved this thread. You know, they continuously told this collective that this was the truth about Christ. This is the truth about Christianity. And more than not, people accepted that truth. And that is how they wove the threads. And that is how they ended up bringing back all of those who ended up breaking away and ultimately making it come full circle. So if you ever wonder how they do this, this is exactly how. Like Dyanna has pointed out, they need us to create it for them. You know, they need us to do the manifesting for them. So this is how they do it, because the general collective looks towards the authority, you know, which we honestly need to stop looking towards authority for these bigger answers. And we need to start looking within ourselves, in our communities, in other people. Because as Jesus said, love thy neighbor, for that neighbor is also you. That there is a lot to say and a lot to learn and a lot to take in from that truth. So ultimately, we have to stop letting them weave the threads, guys. And this is why we're here. You know, and this is where, you know, we get back down to the symbolism of flipping the table. And that in and of itself is another way of getting them to stop weaving these threads into this false matrix reality. Because you have to also bring into question this. Is it possible that we have potentially also manifested this false reality around ourselves? Mm-hmm. Because we have taken on these truths from these authority figures and allowed them to weave these threads. So that's something also we have to ask ourselves when we talk about the matrix or the false matrix is, well, yes, they created it, but did we also ourselves have a hand in this creation? And that's something we have to hold in our awareness, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what you just said there actually ties into, if people want a tangible way to see this, poverty mentality and the way people just go, oh no, I can't be better. I can't blah, blah, blah. Like our trip coming up in October, that may or may not happen. I still don't know because it's not completely up to me. But I found myself with all these scares because
you froze up. But no, I can imagine. You know, when it comes to a trip that large, you would find yourself with some scares. But yes, guys. None. Oh, there you go. You came back. Okay. So you found. Yourself with some scares.
Yeah, I found more places of, it's more than poverty mentality because I know we can afford it. It's not the money. It's like the capability. Like, so airplanes keep going down. I keep hearing, oh, I shouldn't fly. And then driving, oh, we could be stopped and get shot. Like the doom imprint coming in on this. It's like the way they'll seed into your brain. Meanwhile, one of my biggest things I want to manifest is traveling the world. Yet I'm coming up with all these excuses not to go to Oklahoma because, and it's still up to my husband. It's not up to me. We're going to discuss it tomorrow. But he did say yes to the summer. Some ways, and usually like when it's just me because I haven't got the chance because he's been working so much to talk to him about it, he's usually coming in with the mature blah blah reasons, and I'm right there with like, no, you have to use your all as mind power. But when he wasn't there to do that, I found I was policing myself. I was coming up with my own like fear reasons. And there were so many because I'd put away one and another one would come. I put away another one would come. And just all these reasons to get me not to step that level higher. Because going on a trip like that and actually getting to meet all you guys would be huge. So why would I try to stop myself? You know, like why would I even do that? Because getting a passport's hard. Because traveling with kids is hard. Going alone is hard. Like all the different variables that come up in our life, which is applicable not just for trips, but in your job. When we're talking about saying your truth, you can have all these variables, right? But God will provide and God will take care of it if it's meant for you. So there will be things, and you just have to, like what you just said about Carl Jung, life is suffering or life is pain. Because yes, life can be hard. Getting a passport and dealing with bureaucracy can be hard. Going through the freaking airport can be hard. Being afraid on an air, although it's not so much on the airplane, it's more just like, I don't know what it is. Everybody's scared of flying, so that's not even a thing. I think that's normal. Traveling across America into lower, because I've been to Chicago and I've been to New York, but those places I guess should be more dangerous. So why am I scared of Oklahoma? You know what I mean? Actually, I was like, those places are, no, actually those places are more dangerous. So you see how like the mind will just literally make stuff up to get you in these fear places, to get you not to live out your truest of truth. And that is webbed into reality as well. Weaved is the word I was looking for, but webbed works too, into our reality as well. The doom imprint, which Sarah taught us about, because we all knew we had this, or the witch wound, which goes into the heretic wound, really, because speaking your truth, you got killed. The doom imprint, we have technically been killed so many times. They found a way to manipulate us into these constant fear responses that limit us and to hold us down to living our truest truths. So that's where we're the warrior, and we step past the fear and we do it anyways, no matter what, if it's soul aligned. And that's.
You froze up again. The one thing I did want to add, I want to assure you on this too, is you have nothing to worry about it in Oklahoma. The only reason you would have anything to fear in Oklahoma is if you stepped on somebody's property without being asked. It's too rural, and it's very rural out there, but I just wanted to throw that out there for you. No, people in Oklahoma are not wild west. And they call it the wild. I'm technically in the wild west out here. Colorado being on that aspect or on that side of things, but that's interesting because you've been to Chicago and you've been to New York and
I went through a Dominican jungle too. Like, this is because we were scared. We were walking the streets and all these cars kept driving by, because I had the idea to be adventurous, Sagittarius, which we both have that in us. And when we were in Mexico, it was very safe. That was we were spoiled. And then we're on these streets in the Dominican. I'm like, what did we do? We're not safe. And then so we verted into the jungle, and we got back to our hotel through the jungle, because I'm very good with directions. That's part of my divergentness, but I'm very good at knowing where to go, just point and shoot. So we got there without directional issues, but I was like, oh my God, because we're used to Canada. The forests are safe in Canada. Like, we could have met like a freaking tiger or who knows what.
It is, but no, it is. It's that doom imprint. It can get the better of us sometimes. But also, one thing we have to realize too about the doom imprint is it's an aspect of our ego. Mm-hmm. It definitely is. Your ego is the one who wants you to stay safe and wants you to stay in that comfort. And that's why a lot of the times too, when people get ready to embark on an entheogenic experience, whether it be an ayahuasca ceremony, whether it be an iboga ceremony, they might be really, really gung-ho up until like the very moments right before, but then they start having this apprehension. They start having this like, I don't know about this. And what that is this the ego, and the ego knows what's about to happen to it. It's about to go bye-bye for a little bit. And so it's drawing out all of its safety mechanisms. It's like, trying to get you to get somewhere safe, because ultimately when we look at psychology for the ego and what it is, that's the other aspect of it too, is like, it helps keep you safe in that regard. So it is, once it thinks that because it's about to go bye-bye, it's like, oh no, we need to keep them safe. Or especially if it's like a new experience you haven't embarked on before too, it can chime in and be like, oh, you sure about that? Like, you sure you want to do something like that? So that's just also something too, like, in my opinion, to keep in everybody's awareness that, when you have these apprehensions, that is your ego. It ultimately is. It's your ego kicking in its safety measures. But yeah, I just wanted to say, you don't have anything to worry about in Oklahoma. I can tell you that for sure.
That's good to know. I didn't think so much Oklahoma as the states I'd be going through on the way, which I'd have to even look at a map to be sure. I think Virginia and Pennsylvania, maybe, and then Missouri, maybe, and then Oklahoma. So I think all those are not Detroit. So Detroit's over there,
Yeah.
but I think they're more below kind of Alberta, but maybe Saskatchewan. Like Detroit's over there, or maybe no, I don't know. See, don't know my geography, but I know that's the one you got to be worried about.
Well, the one thing I can assure you too is nobody's got beef with Canadians here, so you are definitely, yeah, you are all good to go. Nobody's got beef, but no, I can understand it too, But as we digress, one thing we're gonna bring up here too before we kind of close everything out for this Sunday, even though we're doing this on a Saturday, is the simple ways and simple methods that you can take to start implementing that healing on a step-by-step or a piece-by-piece basis. We talked about in the beginning how to not fill your plate too much and to not fill your cup too much. So ultimately what I would do, at least in my method, and Dyanna can give you hers after I'm done when we talk about this, is pick the one thing that you really need to work on. Right, as far as in your healing, whether it's that doom programming that's within you, whether you have certain trauma responses from certain instances that have happened to you in your life, or whether or not there's a certain issues you have with treating people a certain way, either loving thy neighbor along those lines. So what I would say is honestly pick the one that you need to work the most on and start cultivating the work on it, because ultimately what you're going to find as you start to push this energy and this focus into this aspect of your healing is going to open the door for you to be able to take on more. You have to, it's almost like, I know I compare a lot of things to the gym. I do, but it's honestly, it's a good analogy though. Like when you look at it and, like if you treat things as muscles, of course, when you first start working out, yeah, you can't do too much, you need to start off slowly, but as you continue to adapt and progress, you can start to add more and more. And the same thing happens with your healing too, guys. Yes, you can compare a lot of things in life to working out. You can, it's a very similar principle, but the same thing happens with your healing. So at first you pick that one major thing that you really need to work on. And how do I work on it? Especially a lot of you out there who are still working a 9-to-5, you can do shadow work at work. It's not hard, you can kind of pick it apart and digest it throughout the day, especially if you encounter a scenario that has to deal with what you're healing on within yourself. Then that's a real good test for you, because then you can be like, why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I doing this? And you have that time in the moment to do so. So the number one thing I would say to a lot of people is, don't overfill your plate and don't overfill your cup. This is going to be a process. It's not going to be something that you just literally, you go to the all you can eat buffet and you just stack as much shit on your plate as you possibly can. And they're all looking at you at the buffet too, like, what's wrong with this person? What is going on here? But no, you just fill up, you take what you can and you work with what you can. And through that, it's going to open the door for you to be able to take on more and work on more. Now, Dyanna, what are some of your methods for it? I definitely want to hear, because we do have that interesting dynamic. I can be very disciplined and monk-like, but you can be very flowy. So let's kind of hear how you do it.
Oh my God, that's so funny you say that. Like you can hear what I'm about to say, because I had this. Okay, and you can swim in the deep end and you can breathe in the water, the etheric waters. This is important because the panic and the doom imprints that come up are going to be similar to when you cliff dive, which I've done, and you panic because you think you're not going to get up in time. You will, because that's just, you would not sink. If you're actually just cliff diving and you don't have like an anchor on you, you would never go further down than you can come back up. And that's the same when we dive into these etheric waters. And we want to remember that we're very layered. So this is very part and parcel with feeling those feelings. And I used to have panic attacks. You remind yourself you can breathe. You can breathe no matter what the mind tells you. You're always swimming and you're always breathing just fine, no matter how deep you go. And the deeper you go into this ascension, into this alchemizing of the self, the pressure is also going to get thicker. You're going to feel it more. That's the kind of thing. Know that I feel that. And instead, because once upon a time when I would feel the pressure of what like these etheric waters do when I'm going at higher levels, is I would turn it into anxiety. I'd be like, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? Am I saying something wrong? Because I would feel it. And then the mind wants to go to the negative and it wants to blame you, it wants to shame you, right? Blame and shame. They love to sprinkle that on us because it will throw us off the truth. The truth is you can feel pressure, but that's why deep breathe. Just deep.
I agree with you. I'll carry on until you unfreeze, but no, exactly. You can always breathe, and that's actually in those moments, that's something that you should focus on, is your breathing. Up there you go, you're back. So you're talking about feeling the pressure.
Yeah, so you can feel the pressure and you're going to just recognize you can breathe. Deep breathe through the nose, because as you continue forward in your jobs, in your life, in the pressure cooker that is Ascension, because you can choose to go up to the surface and breathe the air you're used to breathing, or you could stay down in the deep end and keep going further, knowing you can breathe. And all of our blocks and everything that get in our way is what we need to work through, alchemize through. But you're not going to work through any of them unless you push yourself. And there is a difference. I said this about my children at the school. I said this about in the earlier panel. And it's such a thing that we need to start to find within the variables of the self is tantrum versus trauma. And you want to be in the middle. You don't want to let your ego have a tantrum and get its way and stop you from advancing the self. But you also don't want to create a trauma and push yourself where you're not meant to go, or just too fast when you're not ready, where you create a trauma. You want to deep breathe and stay as stabilized as possible, allowing the pressure, allowing it. So that means it's going to be uncomfortable. And then whatever that is for you, are you telling your boss the truth? Are you speaking up and giving your good idea? Do you have an idea that's good, but you're worried they'll be like, because I've said many good ideas in my life at work, and any place, school systems, all the time. I'm that's projector. I can't stop. So, but I notice like to say my good idea and have people be like, what? Just do it anyways and stand firm on it. Because what I used to go is, oh, I'm so sorry I spoke. Oh, I'm just so stupid. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I would apologize for just saying the truth and then get bitter and angry about it. And live, which a lot of people do in their working environments. That's why 9-to-5s are torture. If you actually think about it, because I used to be like that at work, I'm like, what is wrong with my job? I was an accountant in the end when I finally got fired. Or like, this is easy. This just should be good. But it's because it's so disharmonious to my actual being. Nothing about it was right. But you might have a job where you could look at and go like, actually, like, I don't mind making this car part, or I don't mind like what Don says he does. Like he's got like, but no, that's fantastic. Because what do you get to do? You get to drive all day. Like I thought about being a truck driver because I love driving. And so like, that'd be cool. But I don't want to.
No. I'm go ahead. You came back. What were you saying?
But you think about what you actually like to do. And then what you can end up realizing is a lot of the time in your job, you get bitter and angry because you're not speaking your truth and you're not speaking your truth. But realize that you can breathe in the deep end. Realize that pressure is not your enemy. Realize that everything you have inside you, from the doom imprint, the heretic wound, the witch wound, you are not going to die this time. As long as like, I mean, if you want to be a race car driver and that's your dream, you might die. But that's just what you decided to do, is being a race car driver, because that was that profession. But us as podcasters, probably not going to kill us, and there's so probably at your work if you work in the healthcare industry, honestly, speak up. People are dying en masse just simply because the number one causes, 1 or 2, is medical malpractice in America. And that's just, wow. Like their population is off the charts. That's so sad and horrible. And most of you know better. The way you handle patients, the way you handle patients' parents, disgusting. The way you handle like almost everything is disgusting. All the paperwork you have people do, disgusting. The whole monetary system behind the medical system, disgusting. And that's just an obvious one. You could have problems if you work at a factory, if you work at a restaurant, if you work at a office. Hopefully all those get shut down. I will see no harmonious reasons for them in the end. But no matter what you're doing, find the truth of it, say the truth of it, even though it's uncomfortable, realize you can breathe, realize you can live through it. And then that's how the world gets fixed. One uncomfortable move at a time by you in whatever avenue you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, say the truth.
100%. And exactly. That is also taking the healing into account, and you're expanding your healing into the areas of your subjective self that have to do with the collective healing as well. Absolutely. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you again for joining us for another Church of True Christ Sunday ministry. We hope this was insightful for all of you, and we hope this helped you get a deeper understanding of what it means to heal and accept Christ into your life just a little bit further. Other than that, we will be back next Sunday. We will have something else we will be talking with you about. Dyanna and I will discuss it during the week. It'll probably come to us. And we look forward to coming back. Next week will be a live show. It will not be a pre-recorded show. I guess you're done with dance for the year.
Dance is done, but summer's coming up, so we'll see.
For sure. Well, definitely, of course, guys, the number one thing with the weather that I'll leave everybody with is go outside. That's where you need to be, and that's where the divine wants you to be, especially in these times. Go out and soak up the sun, be in nature. We know that nature is divine itself, and it has so many lessons that it can teach us. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us. You can find me. We will have the X profiles at the bottom of the description for the video when it comes up. But you can find me at BG3_cast on X, and you can find Dyanna at Transcending with 3 7s on X as well. And thanks for joining us, everybody. You guys enjoy your Sunday, enjoy the weather, and enjoy your life. And of course, I'll say it here too. Stay safe, stay free, but most importantly, stay sovereign, everybody. Have a good one and enjoy it.